Hi. So my podcast was called Hats Off to Hats, and it was about different ways that idioms or phrases with the word hat, like how many different ways they can be used. So I'll kind of go through some of the main examples that they brought up and what people use it as nowadays, or how it actually started way back when, and how it could mean something totally different now than it meant back in the 19th century or something. So the first one was drop of a hat. And so that used to be back in the good old days, around the 19th century, they said a way to signal things. So, a lot of people back then wore hats. And so if they saw an acquaintance, they would tip their hat. It was a way to signal if you threw your hat into a ring, it meant that you accepted a contest, apparently. And as we all know, really common nowadays is, to hold your hat in your hand or to take it off of your head as a sign of respect. So it was like these little subtle cues of what you were going to do next or what you meant by using your hat or taking it off and whatnot. The next phrase is the drop of a hat. So it's funny because way back when it meant that you were going to start a fight if you threw down your hat. I guess it was really common amongst cowboys. So that kind of made me laugh. It's really commonly, it came from back from the American frontier back then. However, this one guy did some research and found out that it came up in 1837, already established as an idiom. And it was written synonymous to in the twinkle of an eye or the crook of a finger. So it was showing not even how quickly something would be done, but back then it was referring to how quickly people would agree to something. So I think now we're like, oh, my dog got off her leash and ran away at the drop of a hat. But back then it was meant to show that, if you wanted $4 for your milk, and I said, I'm only going to take two, or I'm only going to give you two, and you were like, okay, that's fine. You would have agreed to drop a hat, because you wanted my $2. The next one was passing the hat, and way back when, it originated from street performers, and how they would all pass the hat to get money from the audience. And this one I didn't know, I wasn't familiar with, but it's called the hat trick. That goes along with the passing the hat one. So I guess in America we associate with a hockey thing, passing the hat, but it really came from back when cricket was super common everywhere. If you got 3 wickets with 3 balls, you would get a new hat. And from there it expanded to horse racing, and then got picked up in America with hockey, where if you were to just score 3 goals, then you would get a new hat, passing the hat. The last one that kind of blew my mind was the phrase mad as a hatter. They made it very clear that it was not from Alice in Wonderland, and that it's kind of wild that it's seen as like a kind of a funny phrase to us now, but it was actually really sad how it came about. So back then, the people who used to make the hats, when they wanted to make a nice felt hat back in the 19th century, they would brush the fur on the hat with mercury, and mercury is known to cause all kinds of damage in every which way. So you could lose your memory, it would cause brain damage, slurred speech, just so it made you seem like you were honestly out of your mind. So they would started using that phrase, mad as a hatter, because of the people who made hats would go crazy from mercury. So I think this could benefit us as interpreters, because now we'll all have a little bit of knowledge about a couple more idioms. And like for me, myself, I don't know if I'll use the phrase mad as a hatter, because I'd constantly be wondering if the people around me knew where the phrase came from, and I don't know, it just doesn't seem like something I'd want to use anymore. But I think, yeah, it's definitely good to be really knowledgeable about the origins and the backgrounds from different idioms and phrases and knowing how to appropriately use them or when to appropriately use them. So I think once we become more familiar with that kind of stuff, it could definitely benefit our interpreting and also give us just like a wider knowledge of how much language is constantly changing and how it could mean something so drastic, even just over the last 50 or 60 years have changed. So I think it's a good thing for us to keep in the back of our mind that language is constantly changing and who it's being changed by, who it's being used by. Does the meaning and context change depending on where you're located? Is it something that we say that's funny in America and isn't funny in other places? So good stuff to keep in mind.